Okay. Dr. Mindy Pelz, how are
Hello,
you?
hello. I'm so excited to be here. I wish
Thank
we
you.
were eating though. Why aren't we should be eating when
We
we do this?
should be eating. And in fact, I learned from your book, I definitely need to be eating because I was going to fast in honor of your book for our interview. But then I read that I'm on day 20 of my cycle. And instead, I heated up some taco meat and ate that before our.
Amazing. That is like the biggest compliment you could give me is to show up doing the right thing on the right day of your cycle. Like my job is done.
You can teach an old dog new tricks, which is something which actually is a question that I have. Let's just launch with this question. Is there any amount of body messed upness? I was going to use a curse word there, but I'm really trying not to curse, which is against my personality. But so if I use strange word choices, that's why. Is there any level of being messed up in our bodies that we can't repair? Because I think that I just want to start by saying your book is so incredible. It's so needed. The number of times you've had to say in your book, we don't have this data on women because they just haven't done the studies
Yep.
is shocking and frankly disheartening.
Yep.
And the fact that we need your book so much, because I hear from women and the people who are going to be listening to this in my audience have this certain level of, have I messed up my body too much? Can I still get healthy and lose weight?
Yeah. Okay. So really good question. I'm so happy we're starting here. And in the book, I talk about how every organ has a different cellular turnover. And this is something that's really, really important to think about. Let's say that let's give your cells a number. Let's say 10 is a really healthy cell. And 0 is a cell that's either dying. 1 would be like a cancer cell. As we age, as we use our lifestyle for pleasure, sometimes not for health, we end up creating dysfunctional cells. And they are not 10 cells anymore. They end up being like 7 cells or 6 cells. So they're moving towards disease. And so that's a 6 cell can only replicate another 6 cells. So as these cells are turning over, you are actually replicating diseased cells. But now let's enter in the idea of fasting and eating right and putting that all to your cycle. You now take a cell that's going down into a 5 cell or a 4 cell, and you reverse that. And now with time, you're making it a 7 cell and an 8 cell and a 9 cell. So over the course of a year, 2 years, you are literally regrowing yourself a healthier and new body. So it's been said that all of our cells will turn over within 7 years. Mm-hmm. So this is why I'm saying let's dedicate a fasting lifestyle. Let's use these tools and let's not look at this as a fad. Let's look at this as a healing process that's going to keep regenerating our cells so we become healthier and healthier every year, that we don't become sicker and sicker, which is the acceptable norm right now.
Right. So this is what I love about you, because you weave in your own personal stories, some stories of your patients and people you've worked with and consulted with. But how did you come to the point where you are today with your work with fasting? Like where was the light bulb moment with you where you're like, I need to do this work?
Well, you know what the funniest part of that story is? When I first saw Dr. Osumi's work, on autophagy. That was 2015, 2016 that he won the Nobel Prize for that. And at that time, intermittent fasting was sort of starting to take off, and everybody was fascinated by autophagy. And so I was like, oh, okay, I could fast one day. Let me just try like skipping breakfast for one day. And then when I started to dive into it, I was like, wait a second, no, you're supposed to do this every day. And so I started just playing with the principles, and I had the same result many women have, where I got great results, and like my energy went up, I started dropping weight. All of a sudden I was like, why am I exercising? Because I'm not exercising to lose weight.
Why is my body moving repeatedly and lifting things?
Exactly. So it was, and then that was when I started to see the benefit of it, but I did it wrong because I didn't do it according to my cycle. And so after a year of that, I started to see the consequence of it from a woman's perspective. And that's really when I started to look at, okay, how do I map this to my cycle? And from there, once I solved it for me, I rolled it out to my patients. I saw their results, and then I rolled it out to my YouTube, and we started getting hundreds of thousands. It's millions of people, of women now, that have said, yes, this is what has brought my cycle back and given me hormonal balance. Plus, I'm getting all the benefits of fasting.
It's almost like an epidemiological study.
It was a little bit like an epidemiological study for sure. I should have put some kind of container.
You got to write it down.
I always say, just go to my YouTube channel. You'll see the stories. It's unreal.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. If anybody doesn't subscribe to your YouTube, they are missing out. If you have FOMO, you better be feeling it right now if you're not subscribing to Dr. Mindy Pelz YouTube. YouTube.com/Dr. Mindy Pelz, PELZ. So you are leading me straight into my next question is what's the broad overview of why fasting is different for men versus women? Because most of the stuff I even saw a YouTube video came up in my feed right after one of yours of a guy who had tremendous success doing ADF, alternative day fasting, I think. Yeah. And it made me go, oh, should I be doing every other day of my whole life? You know what I mean? It makes you think you need to be doing that thing because they had the success with it. So why is it that how the broad strokes of why women are different than men with fasting?
Yeah. So here's the easiest way to look at this. Men are run by testosterone. So every 15 minutes, they get a surge of testosterone, and testosterone goes up into the brain and converts into estrogen. So they only have to think about one hormone, testosterone, and testosterone does really well with fasting. So when a man goes on an intermittent fasting plan, he's going to drop like 20, 30 pounds and start to think that everybody should have that result. With women, we have 3 hormones that are constantly running us: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And the challenge is that estrogen and progesterone play by different games. It's like almost exactly the opposite. Estrogen does well when you fast. Estrogen wants you to keep glucose down, wants insulin down, is very forgiving of cortisol. Progesterone's not. The week before our cycle, which is why I'm so proud of you for not fasting today, the week before our cycle, we need to bring glucose up. Our intelligent bodies actually make us more insulin resistant the week before our cycle so that glucose can be higher. And if we're trying to throw fasting or the keto diet at it during that week, we are actually working against progesterone. So when the fasting movement came out and everybody was getting these insane results, women were crying out saying, I've lost my cycle, I'm anxious, I'm gaining weight. And that was me. I gained weight. And that's why we needed to have a book like Fast Like a Girl. So we could show women how to do it differently.
That's amazing. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me just preface this by saying most of my audience is a very low carb audience. Some people are even zero carb. Some people are any variation you could think of. And that's fine. I like to interview people in our low carb space so I can give different perspectives. And maybe somebody might hear one interview and say, that's the solution for me. And somebody might hear another interview and say, that's the solution for me. So that being said, and I'm saying that more for my audience than for you, because I really resonate with your solution. But let me ask you this. Explain Keto Biotic.
Yeah. So Keto Biotic was a term I came up for my patients years ago, because when the keto movement happened and everybody went very, very low carb, what ended up happening is we forgot the microbiome. We forgot to feed our microbiome with like polyphenol, prebiotic, probiotic foods, which is our fruits and vegetables. Now, again, I don't recommend anybody goes without fruits and vegetables for long periods of time, but it's more harmful for women. And because we have a whole set of bacteria in our gut that breaks estrogen down. So women need a higher carb, nature's carbs version of the ketogenic diet. So with Keto Biotic, it's 50 grams of net carbs. And I'm sure you've talked about this on here, but net carbs is really important because it takes the fiber out of the carb equation. It takes total carbs, you subtract the fiber from it, and now you have a net carb. So a woman can actually get more calories. She can get more nutrients to her gut when she does Keto Biotic, focusing on making sure that her keto is paired with the foods that are going to support a healthy microbiome.
I love this so much because my personal experience, and I think that this has happened on purpose, is because since I am involved so heavily in the low carb community, and I've been so low carb for so long, I thought that if I just did it harder, just do more low carb, harder,
Yes.
faster, you know what I mean, that it would improve, and it didn't. And so your work was like a breath of fresh air to me to go, okay, there's something else. And it usually involves the gut microbiome, which again, for me, having celiac and microscopic colitis, the gut's very important to what's happening, to my responses to stuff. So I want to back it up because you already mentioned autophagy, which I always, side note, giggle at that word because when I first learned it, you know how you sometimes learn a word through reading? You don't say it correctly. You don't pronounce it.
Right. Oh yeah.
And
Oh
I called
yeah.
it autophagy for forever.
Yeah.
But now I know how to say it.
That's like the estrobolome or the strobolome. I'm like, every time I go on an interview, I'm like, I don't know what tomato. It's the
Whatever.
whatever.
We mean the same thing.
So
Although
you can bastardize autophagy if you want.
Thank you. Well, one time I was in a clubhouse and somebody who was a keto coach kept saying the word aspartame. And I realized that he was meant aspartame. But then I was like, oh, you must be young because aspartame or aspartame has been part of our lexicon for quite some time.
Yes.
So we know what aspartame is. But anyway, I thought this was funny.
Too funny.
So autophagy, when I was reading the section we were describing autophagy, I thought to myself, that old adage of feed a cold, starve a fever. Could you explain why autophagy is so important?
Yeah, oh my gosh, again, brilliant question, because what we need to know about autophagy is that in the absence of food, and there's other things that stimulate autophagy like sleep and exercise, but fasting is the best way to stimulate it. And in the absence of food, this intelligence inside your cells turns within and repairs itself. Okay, so what is it going to do in this repair phase? There are several things. First is if it turns, the intelligence goes within and it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to turn into a cancer cell, or this is a very dysfunctional cell, or this cell has a lot of toxins in it. It will actually kill the cell. It's called apoptosis, and it's a process that where cellular death, you want that cell out. You don't want that cell to go rogue and replicate itself. So that's the first thing this intelligence will do. The second thing, to your point on feed a fever, starve a cold, is that it will look around and go, oh my gosh, there's bacteria and viruses in this cell that are going to take over, and it will shut down the replication of those infections, those pathogens inside the cell. The most brilliant study I saw during COVID that I could not believe wasn't being like, people weren't seeing this on major media, was it was literally done on the COVID virus, that viruses have to work off of our energy systems. They can't replicate without our energy, our metabolism. So if a COVID virus went into a cell that was drenched in sugar, it had a heyday. It would fuel up on all that glucose and it could replicate. If it went into a cell that was in a state of autophagy, the sugar levels were low, it literally couldn't replicate. So the perfect example was when I got COVID, I just fasted. Within 5 days, I had, my symptoms were minimal. Within 5 days, I was negative and I was back out into the world. That's a perfect example of how we could have been using a free resource if we had been educating people of the
free resource. How are we going to make money off of that, honey?
I know. Agreed.
Free resource. Yes, I know. And actually, when I read that part about the COVID study in your book, it blew me away. It really did. So
it's crazy.
It's crazy. Okay. So that's okay. I learned so many things. There's so many places that we can go. I learned so many things in your book that I want to talk about. So you're starting somebody on a fasting lifestyle, which, by the way, we'll talk about that at the end, how people can join your community and obviously get the book Fast Like a Girl. You guys, don't be dum-dums. Go get her book. Also, it reads so easily. You're just like, I get it. And I like in the book, you are repeating key concepts so that we understand it. Like you make it so easily palatable for you to go, okay, I get why I need to do this. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Talk to me about glycogen stores. Now, my understanding, being a lay person, is that we store glycogen in our muscles and then it's exercise, but I didn't realize how much we stored in our liver. And I just thought, well, I've been low carb for so long. How could I even have any extra glycogen?
Right.
How does that work? And why is fasting a good tool for getting rid of that?
Yeah. Have you ever put a continuous glucose monitor on?
I have. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll talk about how you can see, because that's the one thing that my community has asked is like, how do we know what our stores, our glycogen stores are? And then there's a way to tell on those CGMs. But here's the concept that people need to know is that when we go back and we go, okay, we lived a life, let's say, of the standard, American diet or the Western diet, because it's now all over the world. And it was high in sugar, high in bad oils, high in refined flours. That created a surplus of glucose. And that surplus of glucose had to be stored somewhere when the body wasn't able to keep up with using it. So it gets stored in 3 areas. It gets stored in your liver, your muscles, and your fat. And one of the things that I really am trying to get across, especially to women, because we do a lot of shaming and guilt in our head, is that when you look in the mirror and you see the fat around your gut, you see the fat around your arms or your glutes or wherever you don't like it, I really want women to reframe that and just see it as storage. Your brilliant body needed to put it somewhere. So instead of putting it around your heart and lungs, instead of sending the glucose into your eyes, creating macular degeneration and issues like that, instead of putting it in your brain, contributing to things like Alzheimer's, it put it in fat, which is a way better place for it to put it.
It's just safekeeping.
Yes, that's it.
Safe.
That's it. It's just like, I'm going to store it over here because I might need it one day. So it did the same with the liver. It did the same in muscles. Now, the muscle is a little easier to get to because if you exercise, you're going to release the stored sugar out of the muscles. But what do we do with the stored sugar in fat and liver? And the liver, we call that glycogen. All glycogen is stored glucose.
So you can have fat that has sugar in it.
That's right. And toxins. Oh my God, the fat has hormones. It has sugar. It has toxins in it. It is storage. That is the brilliance of our body. That's all it is. It's just storage.
Wow. So how, yeah, I also learned that in your book. I didn't realize we had excess insulin stored in the liver as well, but it's stored in fat. It's because insulin's a hormone.
Yeah, and so then the liver has to break all these hormones down. So it's trying to release stored sugar. It's having to detoxify like toxic estrogen. It's having to break down different hormones like cortisol, so it's usable for you. So when you go into a fasted state, what you're doing is you're stopping the storage from happening, but you're also asking the liver and the fat and you're asking muscles, hey, give me what that storage is. Let's release that, which is why from a fat loss perspective, so many people are getting permanent weight loss. I can't tell you like the number of people that come up to me out in public and they're like, hey, I just want to let you know that was the only diet that ever worked for me was fasting.
What do you mean permanent weight loss?
Because your body has to release that actual sugar. And once it's released, So it breaks fat down. It is literally breaking fat down.
But is it breaking it down and metabolizing it during the fast? Is that what's happening? Okay.
Yeah. So it's getting rid of it to never be returned.
Right. Unless you go back to your standard American diet and
that's right.
Fast.
Right. That's right.
So talk to me. What are dopamine pathways? That's something I learned reading your book.
Yeah. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that causes our thoughts to be excitatory. So we have like 72 trillion neurons in our brain, and thoughts are going across these neurons. And when in order to connect from neuron to neuron, they need a neurochemical so it can jump across the neuron, carry it across. So when you have dopamine, what ends up happening is you get that, oh my God, this is exciting. And you're motivated. That is really dopamine's job, is to motivate you. So thoughts are exciting for you. Thoughts are, I want to go do that. Thoughts become like, I want to pick up my phone for the 15th time in the last 10 minutes because there's going to be something on there that is excitatory. So we get that also with food. And one of the most interesting examples of dopamine with food is when you look at your favorite food, you don't even have to put it in your mouth. The anticipation of seeing that favorite food that it's about to go in your mouth is causing your dopamine pathways to start to ignite. So the challenge that we have is we're oversaturated with dopamine. And so when you go into a 48-hour fast, what you're doing is you're resetting that pathway and you're getting it to work more efficiently. Plus, you are opening up new dopamine receptor sites will open up. Well, Anna, think about this. Like, why would the body do that at 48 hours? It's because at 48 hours without food, it needs you to go find food. So it's going to make more dopamine receptor sites, knowing that you're going to be more motivated to go find food to keep you alive. That's how brilliant your body is. Crazy, right?
So sneaky. I love it.
So sneaky. So you can use a 48-hour fast to reboot somebody who's got depression and is just like, nothing brings me that dopamine rush anymore. Okay, beautiful. Let's throw some, 48-hour fasts at and reboot the system. Or the person who's food addicted, but is eating without really getting the pleasure of it. So they have to eat more and more and more. Okay, well, let's cycle in some 48-hour fasts. So now when you eat, you're like, some small amount of food is just giving you that deep pleasure that it should give you. That's why I threw that fast in there. It's just too important for us on so many levels.
Well, and I think the amount of folks who are struggling with mental health stuff, it could be a game changer and a lot less disruptive than some other modalities out there. Just not to name names.
Yes. Yeah. And this again was, everything, those fasts that I map out in Fast Like a Girl, they had to have science on it. And I had to see massive results in my community. And that 48-hour fast, when I first looked at the science on these dopamine receptor sites being new ones forming, I'm like, okay, let's play with this a little bit. Let's take it to my community. I was shocked at how many people months after that fast were telling me their mental health was in a better place. It's crazy.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great to have a community to be able to try stuff out too. The people are, mine is just like, hey, I got an air fryer. You guys want to try this recipe? But still,
that works too.
It does. It's great. Something of deep interest to me that I feel like is not talked about enough, or it's talked about in some sort of circuitous manner because nobody totally seems to understand it, is the idea of the gut biome, gut motility, what you call the microbial geography and glucose metabolism. I was fascinated by this and wanted to know more. Can you explain the broad strokes of that for us?
Yeah. So the context in which I put it in the book is that when we are putting ourselves into these fasted states, what's happening is we are changing the whole gut microbiome environment. So this isn't key because we talk a lot about old bacteria dying off. It does that, but what it also does is it takes when we have a traffic jam of dysbiosis in the gut. So that is the bad, the good, they're all vying for space on the inner gut wall. The bad is always going to win out, but they get clumped together. And so then what happens is we don't even absorb nutrients out of our foods anymore, out of the good food we're eating. So when we go into a 24-hour fast is where the biggest literature or research is showing, what we see is that those bacteria start to spread out. And that's called geographical diversity or geographical relocation of these microbes, so that they spread out and that inner mucosal lining starts to be repaired. So things like a leaky gut situation, you can literally heal with one 24-hour fast. But here's the interesting thing that we have to realize. We talked about how our human cells our human body will completely repair itself every 7 years. The microbiome will completely repair itself every 3 days.
Wow.
So we can use something like a 24-hour fast to change the terrain. And now we get a reset. Now we get a new opportunity to start to eat better food to improve our microbial health. And honestly, I threw all the supplements away once I figured that out. I do very few supplements now for myself or for patients because I just throw a 24-hour fast and everything heals.
I was going to ask this later, but I want to ask it now. Then what, because gut absorption is a big thing that I'm very interested in, because I spent a lot of money on supplements as well. And then you take the absorption test and you're like, well, turns out you're not even absorbing vitamin A or whatever it is, you know what I mean? And it's frustrating. So that's such an accessible solution right there. I'm surprised all pharma's not shutting you down, my dear.
I am actually a little bit too. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to like jinx myself, but our community has been so powerful and so, willing to collaborate and share their stories. And I've learned so much listening to so many, and I see stories every day of people getting off medications, and I'm surprised they're not coming after me either.
Well, listen, don't worry about it. They're really busy inventing new things we need to take drugs for. So it's all good. Circle of life.
Food. Once big food gets a hold of all the meals people are skipping.
We'll talk about that. So how would people go about, like, what tests do you recommend? I know you talked about the Dutch test. What tests do you recommend to kind of assess where your baseline is pre-therapeutic activity? Like should we get the CBC? Should we get a metabolic pan? Like what do you want people to do to test where they are so that they know what kind of a fast they need to have? Other than, by the way, get the book and you'll see all the symptoms she lists, and then you'll understand, oh, maybe I should do this kind of fast, or maybe I should try that kind of a fast. Yeah.
I think the greatest number that everybody should be looking at, if we just make this very simple, is hemoglobin A1C.
Okay.
And let's talk about why. And that's on your CBC. Your doctor will do it. And let's talk about why that's so important for what fast you want to do. Hemoglobin A1C is going to give you a picture of what your glucose and insulin dance has been for 90 days. Are you insulin sensitive? If you're above a 5 on hemoglobin A1C, you are actually more insulin resistant. So if you score above a 5, I'm going to encourage you, A, to build a fasting lifestyle, but also B, to lean into some of the longer fasts. And if you're above a 6, more longer fasts, because we've got to go after all of that. We've got to reboot that insulin system. Now, if you're below a 5, you're doing great. So be curious about the different fasts. You can throw some longer ones in, no problem. But here's what's really, what most people don't know about hemoglobin A1C is it tells us how much oxygen is getting carried throughout your system, because a red blood cell carries oxygen to your brain, to your tissues. And when your hemoglobin A1C is above 5, your red blood cells are gooked up with glucose, almost like they've got gum on the outside of that cell. And so it's not going to deliver oxygen to your tissues as easily. That is a huge issue, especially for your brain function. So I like that one number to tell us, do we need to go into these longer fasts, or are we okay just throwing some shorter fasts at it?
That is so wonderful. And it makes me think of one time I had a doctor years ago tell me that when you have excess blood glucose, it's like little shards of, like, microscopic shards of glass going through your capillaries. And I was like, oh, you got me.
That's
horrifying to think about.
It's horrifying. That's I think that's a good way to say it, because it does motivate. But I think of it like, if you want to accelerate aging, just keep your hemoglobin A1C above 5. If you want disease, just keep it above 5.
That's the soundbite right there. If you want to feel, look, and act old, keep your A1C high.
Yeah. So that one number needs to be the needle, needs to be the target. And what we are we only look at that number as saying to people, you're either pre-diabetic or you're not. Let's break this freaking number down. It is because the higher the number, the less oxygen to your cells. And when you don't get oxygen, the cells die. The cells of your eyes die, the cells of your liver dies, the neurons in your brain die. They need oxygen, and your red blood cell is what carries that. But if it's gooked up with glucose, you're not going to get oxygen to your body, and you will age quicker.
I know it's a glucose pathway issue, but when you say it, it makes me want to take deep breaths.
Right? I know.
I'm like,
it's right. Because and this is the point around oxygen, is we have looked at hemoglobin A1C as this diabetic marker, and it's all around glucose. But let's talk about the end result of that is worse than insulin sensitivity. The end result is lack of oxygen. And now we've got a massive problem.
That's so super helpful to have one thing to dial it into. So, and by the way, y'all can go up to the CVS and they have an A1C test at the CVS over the counter now. So
yeah,
there's no order it online. Go just, I mean, if you don't have a doctor or insurance, go find out.
Yeah. And you can do it.
Chances are if you're listening to this, you're proactive. So
yeah, hopefully. And then the other thing is, you know, your doctor at best will do it every 90 days. Most doctors are doing it once a year. That's not enough to know what direction you're moving. Do that. If you can go to your CVS, do it once a month. Start fasting.
Yeah, I think it's like $30 that
number.
Yeah. Do it.
So easy.
I love knowing. I just love knowing. And here's like, I had my first CAC calcium score test in 2017 and it was a 0. And that's all fine and good. But then now it's 2023 and it's time to go get another one. It's like, well, how is this low carb life doing for you? What if they've been wrong this whole time? And, you know, all my arteries are clogged. So I go in for the second one and it's a 0, you know, a couple months ago. And I think to myself, okay, that's a relief. And of course your mind can play tricks on you. I'm normal like everybody else. I go, oh God, what if it's terrible? What if I'm dying? And I don't know.
Right.
But I go, it's an even better number because I have the other number and I can track what's going on with my body with that particular marker. So I love that. And the A1C can be pretty.
It's a big one to, that's a big one to track. And the other thing I would say is that I just want to point out that if you're waiting for insurance to pay for your blood work, you are going to get a slower pace. Typically, insurance companies are not willing to do these tests on a regular basis. But the new world we're living in, you can get these tests on your own. You don't need your doctor. Like you said, you can go to CVS. So we have to also remind ourselves that part of responsibility around our health is not letting the insurance company dictate how we're going to monitor our health.
We're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yes.
For the insurance companies. Define weight loss resistant. And the reason I ask this is because I'm the one who's the boots on the ground with the other podcasts that I do. And I'm in the groups and I guess I am this person. So I want to find answers on behalf of all the women who have said, I tried it. It doesn't work. No matter what I do, I can never lose weight. So define weight loss resistance and why this could be fasting could be therapeutic for that.
Oh my gosh, such a great question. So clinically and culturally, what we would say weight loss resistance is it's the same thing as insulin resistance, which is your body is not regulating the insulin glucose system anymore. So you are actually storing more fat than you are losing fat. And no matter what you do, no matter what diet you go on, you can't move the needle on weight loss. Now, I want to redefine weight loss resistance and say that you are not metabolically switching. And I put a whole chapter in there on metabolic switching being the key piece to weight loss that we're not talking about. So you have two energy systems, one metabolism or energy system. Those words are synonymous, that is going to function off of sugar. Now, sugar doesn't mean when you eat sugar, it just means when your blood sugar goes up, that you are now burning energy from that glucose that is raising up. When we go on calorie deficit diets, when we go on fad diets, all we're doing is trying to manipulate this one sugar burner system. And it's part of why we can't lose weight, because if we bring our sugar down, if we're not bringing our sugar down, we're not actually starting to drop weight. You've got to get yourself switched over into the fat burning system.
Right.
And the only way you can get over there is by letting your blood sugar drop for a significant period of time. It takes about 8 hours after a meal for your blood sugar to start to get low enough to switch you over into this fat burning system. About 12 hours after eating a meal, you are now in the fat burning system. And once you are there, your intelligent body, what it says is, okay, glucose hasn't gone up in 12 hours. It's time to burn some fat to make another fuel source. And that other fuel source is ketones. Now, the beautiful part of this is that ketones go up to the brain, they heal the brain, they go up and turn off the hunger hormone. So the longer you fast and train yourself to fast, the easier it gets. So for weight loss resistant people whose diets have never worked, they need to know that you've got to periodically switch into this fat burning system. And the best way to get there is through fasting.
Right. So I guess the metabolic switching thing is pretty amazing. And I've been hearing more about metabolic switching, metabolic flexibility. And I really like it because I have noticed, because now basically for the most part, I personally have been doing low carb so long, I'm pretty much in some degree of ketosis at any given time, unless I'm intentionally not. So I guess I always worried that like, oh, I have to stay. If once you go in ketosis, you have to stay in ketosis. And you're saying no.
No.
Tell me about that.
Actually, like if you wanted to actually get a deeper result with your low carb life, you want to periodically switch out of ketosis. Now, here's the beautiful
Talk about that.
Yeah, here's the beautiful part about being a woman is I'm encouraging you to switch out the week before your period, because that's when it's damaging progesterone. So if you have a cycle, you can go be in your keto lifestyle, for 3 weeks out of the year. That's going to be pretty good. Ovulation has a little different slant that we can talk about in a moment, or 3 weeks out of the month. But that week before your period, switch out. And when you switch out, now you're able to get the glucose requirements that progesterone needs. Once your cycle starts, switch back in. So that would be a monthly example. If you're a postmenopausal woman, you need to switch out at least 1 or 2 days a week, depending upon your progesterone stores, because we've got to cater to progesterone. The ketogenic diet and progesterone do not go hand in hand. And you will destroy your progesterone levels if you stay low carb and you're trying to get into that ketosis forever.
I can relate to that, having had my progesterone tested multiple times and having it be pretty trashed. So, yeah. So what I love, okay. Go back to progesterone fasting, introduce the concept of cortisol with all kinds of fasting. You have so many different kinds of fasting. There's a little something for everybody in there. And I'm glad that you mentioned people without a cycle or postmenopausal too, because half my listeners are postmenopausal and we'll all be there soon.
Yeah,
that's right. I should say not soon.
The bus is waiting. The bus is waiting for us.
For me, the bus it's waiting very closely. It's time for me to go on the ride. But and also I will say, I couldn't imagine going through perimenopause without having this knowledge or this, like the amount that it has lessened what I witnessed my mom and other women in my life go through. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can we talk about that for one moment?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. And then we'll get back to the cortisol thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because after 4, what women have to understand is as estrogen goes down, you become more insulin resistant. So the diet that you do at 45, or let's put it this way, the diet you do at 35 is not going to work for you at 45, which
talk about this inverse proportional thing that's happening with estrogen and insulin resistance.
Yeah. So estrogen goes low and insulin resistance goes high, which is the menopausal weight gain. So you have to go into keto. You have to use fasting. If women that don't do that during their menopausal journey are going to have the worst menopausal symptoms. So, the women under 40, I really want to say, please, I encourage you to fast like a girl in the way I teach it in the book. But if you're over 40, this is mandatory. That's what the Menopause Reset book that I wrote was all about. This is mandatory.
Book. Love that book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. That is the keto and fasting will help you prevent that weight loss, because of estrogen is sending you into weight gain, and that the loss of estrogen causes you to be insulin resistant.
It's fun. It's fun times.
Right? I know, but it's crazy, right? So, this is the thing, is like, how many women have at 45 are just bitching and moaning, and then they're going into extreme challenging diets, and they're trying to work out harder than ever, which is another problem, because when cortisol goes high, now we're taking progesterone.
Back to
So now
cortisol,
she's,
yes.
yeah. So
yes.
now she's losing her cycle even more. Now she's more anxious. So she's gaining weight. She's anxious. She's not sleeping, and she's pulling out all her old tricks, which is, let me work out harder. Let me go into more deprivation. And
Right.
that is not working. And that is what I'm really trying to help that perimenopausal woman understand. Stop. That's not working. We have to learn how to ebb and flow. And progesterone wants you to sit on the couch. Progesterone wants you to grab a big sweet potato and lather it with some grass-fed butter. And progesterone wants you to chill out. And if you do that, she will make her appearance. And then once she makes her appearance, you will feel better. You start bleeding if you're in that perimenopausal time. And now you can go into your keto, fasting, hard working out, and it's going to be so much more effective. So cycling this becomes powerful for the woman over 40.
It's almost, dare I say, intuitive. However, we've gotten so far away from our intuition because we have things to do. And we have people we have to email and work that has to be done, and children that must be shuttled to things, and all the things. And all my girlfriends who are going through menopause who have teenagers in the house, I feel for you.
Oh, I feel for you too. Mine are 20 and 23 now. So
mine's
we're moving
grown,
out
so,
of that a little bit, but can we talk about the intuitive part for a moment?
I would
Because
love
this
to,
is
please.
another like message I'm trying to help both men and women see. What we've created in our healthcare system is a very patriarchal, masculine, linear, black and white system. You have this symptom, here's your diagnosis, here's your drug, here's your surgery. We need to bring the feminine back to healthcare. And when we bring the feminine back to healthcare, what that looks like is we stop giving our power away to the doctor, and we start taking our own power back and listening to our bodies. Every single woman that I have spoke to about the week before our period says, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I don't want to work out. All I want to eat is carbs. I'm so hungry. I want to eat chocolate. I'm irritable. I want everybody to go away. Yes, because progesterone's saying, hey, sit on the couch, bring glucose up, give me magnesium and chocolate, and it's time to go within. It's not time to go without. So I need you to be irritable and leery of people because I need you to turn within. That is what we're meant to do. And when we bring the feminine back and we start to see that we have this natural ebb and flow, we will stop seeing things like breast cancer, ovarian cancer, PCOS. All of these hormonal conditions are women not honoring what their hormones need at the right time of life.
What is oxytocin?
Yeah, oxytocin is the best hormone ever. We're getting some right now, chatting.
We are.
Yeah, this is what I love about doing podcasting and talking to amazing women like you. So oxytocin is the bonding love hormone. But what I wrote about in Fast Like a Girl is that it will, when you bring oxytocin up, you will lower cortisol. So a great example of that is you are sitting at your desk working as the rushing woman, and your kids are blowing up your phone saying they need all these things when you get home from work. Your boss comes in and dumps a bunch more onto your plate, and your cortisol is raging. So the best thing you can do at that moment is get some oxytocin to bring cortisol down. So that could look like, calling a friend and being like, hey, I need you to laugh with me right now. That could be something as simple as going to your favorite coworker, get out of your desk, walk over to your favorite coworker and just smile and say something nice to them. When we give gratitude to other people, we get get oxytocin and they get oxytocin. Mm-hmm. So if I'm at home, like my son was a teenager, and I was going through some really tough menopausal symptoms, I would just say, hey, I need you to hug me, because I need the oxytocin to bring my cortisol levels down. So, but oxytocin we can get so many different ways, but a lot of it is through human connection. This is why I'm really encouraging women to gather around each other and support each other and nourish each other. We have to get out of being competitive with each other. We got to go into collaboration with each other, because then we bring oxytocin up and then we lower cortisol. And when cortisol comes down, you'll become more insulin sensitive. And when you're more insulin sensitive, now you can balance your sex hormones. That's how powerful oxytocin is.
So when I was reading what you were writing about oxytocin and Fast Like a Girl, I was struck by the notion that oxytocin that we need to have, we need it. We need it, or else we're not going to manage cortisol and all the rest of it, is the one thing that you can't supplement. It has it has to come from a natural human connection. It's the one hormone we have to get, which shows that we're not meant to be islands. You know? Yes.
Oh my gosh, I never put it in that perspective. That's brilliant.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I said something smart. Yay!
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. You're
right.
But
it really did. I was like, we have to, you cannot manufacture it. You can't take it as a pill or a powder or a potion. You have to connect, whether on a friend level or a love level or whatever. You have to connect with other humans.
That's right. That's right. And if you don't, and this is the whole pandemic, let's just put it this way. If you don't, your weight loss efforts are going to be that much more difficult. Yeah. So think about that for a moment. Here we have approached, and I'm just going to go right at weight loss because I know that's such a motivating factor for so many people. Yep. But we've been efforting our way towards weight loss, when really we should be loving and connecting and bonding our way towards weight loss, because hormonally, you're going to be more of a success. Get out of the silo of doing healthcare on your own and jump into communities that can support each other, and then everything becomes easier.
I want to wrap it up there because it's such a high note to wrap it up on. And just FYI, I only got through about a page of my 3 pages of questions.
I could talk to you for hours.
It's just so fun, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I want everybody to go read Fast Like a Girl and your other books. And maybe at some point we'll talk in the future. I know that you and I are going to talk about food labels and food manufacturing at some point. We just have, it's a never ending dialogue.
Yes.
Ladies, be talking. Am I right?
I love it.
Where can people join your community? Where's the best place for them to find you?
Okay. Yeah. And I want to say one other thing on that. I have this dream, Anna, you're the perfect person to do it with. And I can't wait. I'm trying to figure out how to manifest this. Okay. Where we bring a bunch of women together around a dinner table and we have conversations like this. And so, but what we're doing is we're live, we're really bonding with oxytocin. We're celebrating food. We're really connecting. So stay tuned because you're going to be on my list of
I'm in for the dinner party, honey. Yes. I love a dinner party. I'll throw it. I love it.
Yes, I know. I bet. So, you can find me at drmindypelz.com. My YouTube channel is really my passion project. So everything that new research, new insights on fasting and hormones all goes out there. But then we chop it down into little snippets for TikTok and Instagram and Facebook.
If people want to join your Resetter Academy, how do they do that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. That was going right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a membership group because what we found is a lot of people needed a little more support in their fasting. So they can join our Reset Academy. And that's a low-cost membership group that got a kick-ass community. Great. So you could join that. And that's all on my webpage.
One of your recent YouTube videos, maybe like in the past 2 days, you did something talking about cold plunges. And I have to tell you, I had seen something else. I know everybody's doing cold plunges, but of course I'm going to talk about it like no one's ever talked about it before. But I'm just going to say before we wrap it up, thank you for your thing on cold plunges because it got me going. I'm on day 4 and been doing it 4 minutes. Today was 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I didn't mean to do 4:20, but I guess I did. And so that's a whole other, there's so many other things I want to talk to you about. So
we'll do a part 2
for now. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time. Everybody go get Fast Like a Girl. You're really going to enjoy it. And if you're a man who's listening and you listen this far in, God bless you. You must have a really important woman in your life. And we are recording this on International Women's Day. So ladies, you're a badass. And thank you, Dr. Mindy Pelz.
Oh, Anna, this has been amazing. And thank you for pointing out it is International Women's Day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love the way you phrase that you know, men, if you've made it this far, like hats off to you, because you must really care.
You must really care.
And
or you're
you.
like, wow, she's freaking out. So I need to figure out how I can help her. And that's totally normal, by the way.
Yeah. But thank you, because that's what I see for healthcare right now, is where we're going to bring the feminine, the masculine together. This is not an and, you know, an or, this is an and.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.